Hey, I'm going to be talking to Eduardo today on my podcast, whatever. So my brother's like, whoa, tell him I said hello. So my brother, who is somewhat cold in Knoxville, Tennessee, is not as cold as you are in you're in Minnesota today?
I'm in Minnesota today, but interesting enough, we've got spring-like weather.
Really?
Yeah, almost 50-degree out here.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's wild. So you're in Minnesota by way of the Philippines,
well,
road to Spain and wherever, right?
yeah, yeah, the typical Navy brat lifestyle.
So I'm just curious, where all have you lived, Eduardo?
Well, the balance of my life was in Rota, Spain. Although I
Okay.
did spend time. My father had sea duty, so we were in Norfolk, Virginia,
Oh,
stationed for 3 years, and then for when I was a toddler, we spent time in England.
okay.
But yeah, the majority of the time as a child and as a young adult was in Spain. So my dad was almost, which is rare, perpetually. Um, what do we call it in the military again? Perpetually stationed there.
Yeah, that's almost unheard of.
It's almost unheard of. Yeah. So and he was part of a squadron, and so I understand correctly. Typically, it was a period of sea duty, a period of
Was he with the
short.
VQ squadron there?
What's that?
Was he with the VQ squadron there?
He was with VQ and then a couple other ones. So they
Yeah.
were, being squadrons. They could be in the same base, but your mission would be land or shore or sea duty.
Yeah.
So that's how it is. There might be other details behind the scenes that I'm not aware of, but yeah, because a lot of folks would go, "Wait a minute, hold on a second. How is it you're still here?" Because they
Yep.
would be stationed out, then they would rotate back into Rhoda, and they're like, "Dude, you're still here, Eduardo."
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So one of the things that kind of is bringing us together is, I guess, in a way, it's not only this shared interest of martial arts that we have going way back, but it's kind of ironic that we both have a shared interest in the fitness world or the wellness world, the health and fitness world, what have you, right? Um, can you tell us, I mean, what all have you been doing over the past 30 to 40 years? I mean, have you been just a martial arts teacher for a while or only a fitness professional for a while? Or how has your life unfolded, if you will?
Well, I would say both kind of blended side by side. I was always a small guy, right? I think when I graduated, I weighed 125 pounds
Okay.
from high school. So as you can imagine, being 125 pounds and you're a martial artist, I wasn't able to generate as much power as say someone else could.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was at the base gym. I met this guy. His nickname was T-Bird. So what his real name, I don't know what it was, but he was a power lifter.
Okay.
And what I said to him, hey, I know I need a weight train. I don't know anything, right? I would just go in there just lift stuff. There
Yep.
was no rhyme or reason. And he said to me, well, what do you want to do? You want to look good? Or do you want to generate power? Are you an athlete, football player? I said, I'm a martial artist and I'm fast, but I'm not sure that I have enough power.
Ah.
So I remember what he did. We walked in towards the locker room in that conversation, and there was the side of the locker. He goes, "Oh, so what you need is bam!" And he just powerfully just hit with his palm. The locker indented it, and I was like, "Yep, that's what I'm looking for."
Now,
And so
how
he
old are you at this time?
at that point, so when this happened, this was actually during high school. At this point, I was probably a junior in high school, so
Okay.
17, 16, around there. And he put me on a plan where all I did was in every other day, it was just every other day, right? I did heavy bench presses. He was a power lifter, so heavy bench presses, deadlifts, squats, and then
Okay.
every once in a blue moon he'd tell me to go do pull-ups.
Okay.
But that was it. Those were my three main lifts, and he all he did was work on making sure that I could progress my strength. And I
Yep.
did that for a while, and it was interesting because I saw massive changes in my body going from a 125-pound frame to suddenly going up to say 140,
Wow.
and I was still skinny. In my mind, I was still skinny, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the fitness side came in, and in the back of my mind, I kept on thinking, there's some fine science behind this that I need to know. And then suddenly, they had the Marine Corps had a boxing team,
Okay.
and they did a period where they stayed in Rota for about a week. And I was in the gym, and I was doing my deadlifts, doing my squats, and I noticed that they were doing these power exercises, right? So we're doing snatches with the bar. They were doing some really unique stuff with the bench press, where they would load the bench press in the squat rack. They
Yep.
put two pins, and from this pin here to the top one, they would just slam into it. So they put as much weight as they could to complete six. I haven't seen that around. I'm sure it's out there, but I haven't seen it since then. And so I remember going up to the coach and asking him about his, hey, I practice martial arts. He goes, oh, this will help you improve your punching speed.
Gotcha.
Oh, and your punching power. Oh, okay, I want to do it too. So that's when I realized that there was some fine science behind training the body or training athletes. And that's when I really got interested into fitness. So they've all, both martial arts and fitness, kind of evolved together to the
Yep.
degree that I decided to go to college and study exercise physiology. Go in there, get to know the body. How do I train a potential athlete? How do I train myself to get stronger and better? And while at the same time continuing to learn, practice the martial arts. And it was in college when I began. Well, I actually started to teach earlier than that. My father, as you know, is a martial artist. And so, whenever he was sent away for 3 days for squadron, he needed to be out with the squadron. He would say to me, and I wasn't even a black belt then, but he would leave me in charge as a senior student, and I would train adults that
Yep.
were, sailors and Marines.
Uh huh.
And I really learned there what it meant to lead,
Yeah.
because you got people older than you. They need to trust that you know what you're doing. And so that's when I began to teach, but officially as a teacher on my own, it actually started in college. I ran what was the martial arts club,
Oh.
and and even then it evolved because my interest in martial arts started to really change. So I went from um, a martial art that was influenced by the Filipino side, from my father's Filipino side, but primarily very Japanese in nature, right?
Okay.
It comes from the Japanese, traditional Japanese styles, uniforms, belts.
Yep.
Everything started with your horse stance, your
Yeah.
bird stance, right? Very static training, to then actually being influenced by the Filipino martial arts even more. So as I
Okay.
started to learn more about the Filipino martial arts and the training methodologies, it started to also change the way that I taught people.
Okay.
They're not, I want to say, in the end goal is the same, but the methodology that they used to arrive there was slightly different. So I found a way to kind of blend them together
Okay.
while using my newfound knowledge of fitness, right? How to train the body to become very optimized.
Yep.
So it was a very unique period because I got a chance to be myself. You know how it is. In the beginning, you almost want to be who your master is,
Correct.
well, right? Or maybe that's all you think you can be. But as you begin to evolve, you realize that your master did the same thing,
That's right.
right? What he was teaching you, while it respected its root, probably had other influences that came either personally through their experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was a very unique period for me. And I think the one thing that is a common denominator in all of them is the concept of progress, right? Always keep moving. Something's going to get in the way, right? Whether it's knowledge, time, space, maybe money. And I always move forward. There's got to be another way I can do this. If I can't do it this way, if I'm not strong enough, right? How
Yeah.
do I get strong enough? So that has always kept me moving, and I think those are the values that the martial arts, or any sports, but specifically the martial arts will bring, which is discipline, always moving to improve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's a saying? What's the saying? Don't train until you don't get it wrong,
Correct.
right? It's train until you just do it right, right?
Yep.
So you're constantly training, learning, studying, and that concept of self mastery was always part of that, because you would have thought that the journey would have ended the moment. I see this a lot in today's martial arts, which is black belts are given within a 2 year period.
Yeah, you're correct.
So a combination of their, if you see their skill, it's nowhere near black belt level. It's probably as good as a yellow belt, um, and everything ends. There's no desire to continue to progress. They quit their
Mm-hmm.
karate school or what have you. They stop training. There's no progress there, and that all comes down to what it is they really wanted out of it. Did they do you want the belt? Because I could have just gone onto, I don't know, the Century Martial Arts website and purchased a belt for $5,
That's
right?
right.
And so it's the way I was trained, late 70s, 80s. There was a completely different way of living it. I don't want to say that every martial arts school out there does that, but I want to say there's a certain thing that's been lost, and I think that's why the TV show, what is it, Cobra Kai, so
Yeah.
popular, right? I mean, now on one hand they make fun of certain things, but on the other hand, you do see that, right?
Yeah.
You see that never give up spirit, that constantly looking to improve, right? It's this big fight to get there, and that's what kind of builds up who I am over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's self mastery, it's progress, it's discipline, it's knocking out any obstacle that gets in the way, right? Or going around it if need be, or over
Correct.
it. And that's the piece that kind of creates that. So when someone, if someone right now says to me, Eduardo, train me in martial arts, teach me, it looks different than it did when I was in college. It looks different than when I would help my dad teach his classes.
Yeah.
It looks different than the way I was trained. So much
Yeah.
so, I sparred my dad once. Well, I must have been about, I don't know. I was already in college, so I went to college a little bit older. A little bit older. I took my time to get to college just because I really wanted to make a good decision on how I was going to, or where I was going to go with it. But I sparred him, and I remember him going, "I didn't teach you this. I didn't teach you that."
How about that?
But you know what's interesting? Despite that, I he ended up pinning me to the wall of the, well, pinning me. I actually ended up having to lean on the wall
Yep.
of the patio where we were training because he was so smart. I was very overly energetic. I used too much energy,
Yep.
and I gassed out. So
Yeah.
my dad was able to continue, bam, 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 bam. My arms were down. I couldn't use them, and the only thing blocking his shots were my face.
So now I'm curious, going back to what you're talking about, because I want to jump in and look at um, the Filipino martial arts and what preceded that with you. So you were or was it your dad? You were an Ishinryu practitioner before, is that correct?
Yeah, I was, yes.
So
So
old
my
school
my, dad,
Ishinryu.
my dad's friend, which I call uncle, also Filipino, spent time in Okinawa.
Yep.
And while he was in Okinawa, he ended up becoming a black belt in Ishinryu.
Gotcha.
And so when he got restationed in Rota, Spain, he started a martial arts class, which
Yep.
was on the opposite days of the days that you had class, I
Yep.
believe.
I remember that very well.
And so my father, he loved the style, so he put me in that class with
Gotcha.
Uncle Eddie, as his name is Eddie, also, and put me in that class, and it was wow.
Oh, I know. I can remember.
It was wow, right? Those guys that trained in Okinawa back in the day, the concept of earning a belt,
Yeah.
it was truly earning a belt. All right, there
You,
was
you
no monthly testing, nothing like that. It was, you've earned your belt, right?
Correct. Correct.
And
So your foundation, even though you're Filipino at the time, your dad
yeah,
kind of put you in this Okinawan karate system. And then was it that you kind of started deviating and maybe becoming more introspective with your own ethnicity and thinking, you know what, I'm going to look at Filipino martial arts more closely? When did that begin to occur?
it's interesting because my father, in Spain to this day, there's a group of former students of my father. They're Spaniards. And when they speak to their style,
Yep.
although it's wrongly, it's not correct, they call it Filipino karate
I
because my
love it.
father's from the Philippines. He taught karate.
Yep.
But what's interesting was that he would do techniques that look Japanese. They started off with the Japanese formality, in line, right, single
Yep.
step. Then you would do your self defense, whatever technique might be. However, he utilized elements of Filipino martial arts in it.
Interesting.
And so people would go, "Oh, that's interesting," and you go, "Oh, that comes from the Filipino martial arts, right?" Or he would always do uh, here's some sticks, right? Filipino
Yep.
sticks. So he would do where he would tell he would go to local big events with judo schools, right?
Yep.
And he would tell them, "Come and attack me." And he would get in a circle and he would do what, I know I can't do it on here, but he would
No,
do
but
what's called.
I remember seeing your dad do that before, or maybe it was
Yeah.
your uncle. I remember seeing that before when they
And they
would
would,
do demonstrations at
yeah.
different tournaments. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they would try to come in, and it's tough because you don't want to get hit by the stick, and they're moving super
Exactly.
fast. And then even with I put all my toys out here in case you ask me about them. This is my dad's size. I
Oh,
own
that's
these.
your dad's, huh?
Yeah, those are my
That's
dad's. But to see him do a form that's Okinawan, right, and you would see the bam, bam, right, typical movements with it, and then all of a sudden you would see the typical the flash that Filipinos would do in their styles
yeah.
into the form, and you
Yep.
would go, "Wait a minute, I didn't see Uncle Eddie do that," right?
Yep.
So he found a way to kind of
Interesting.
almost blend, and that's where the big questions started to come out because the question was, why are these other people are finding what he's doing interesting, different than what they're doing today? What is it that they're finding attractive? Is it because it looks pretty, or is it because there's a certain level of are there tactical elements of it that they're going, gosh, I wish I knew that? And typically it was that they would ask to train with them so that they can glean a little bit of the strategy and tactics that he was implementing
Yep.
into what's already a good art, right? Any Okinawan karate they're pretty, if practiced
Yep.
correctly, is pretty powerful stuff. So there was always an interest. So that's when I started to go, oh, wow, I wanted to learn even more about it. And I went on a big quest, right? And
Yeah.
in the US, you've got Dan Inosanto
Yeah.
as kind of like the big ambassador of it and one of the top masters of it. I just started to follow him around, and then trained with anyone that I could find from multiple styles here.
Interesting.
So that's how I became very interested, and I did the same thing. I blended from a Okinawan Japanese karate style that had already elements of Filipino to suddenly going more towards the Filipino martial arts side.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, but even now, I train people. If I train someone in Filipino martial arts, you can bet that they will have elements of Okinawan karate in it
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. I think, hearing you talk and looking back, I'm reminded of one thing in particular with my instructor, who who he was, Joe Piku.
Yep.
I remember one statement, and he only said it once, but I remember he said it to the class. And I remember he made a statement one time. He said, "You come here to learn. You'll work out here. You'll train here. But if you're doing things right, your best workouts will always be outside of here." It took me a long time to realize what he actually meant, because I'm thinking, no, it shouldn't be that way. But then when I got older, it's like, now I know what he means, because that's when you experiment and you try new things out and you you evolve, whatever, right? But it took me till probably about the age of, I don't know, 20 or so to really understand because that always kind of bugged me. Because I really didn't understand what he meant. So I realized that, but then kind of like you now, when someone comes, when I look back, because most of my training that I've done over the last several years, a lot of it is, some of it can be in group, but I have had just an explosion in just one-on-one clientele where people will come and say, "Hey, JR, I want private lessons, but I want to learn self-defense." But
Right.
then what happens, that person, they always end up saying, "Well, I want to learn more. Well, I want to learn more." So then I end up showing them, okay, well, we're going to do something new. I'm going to show you a thing. It's called a kata. I'll show them like the first kata of Shotokan karate. I'll say, you know what, you master that. And then we can move on to this other thing called kumites, like one-step sparring, which is like self-defense. So like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. And then at the whole time on the other side, I maybe teach them how to punch and kick with boxing gloves on, right? So they're kind of dabbling in this thing here where I've got them doing a little punching and kicking. We're working on fitness work, but then they're dabbling in traditional old school methodologies. But then over the course of, say, 1 or 2 years, now all of a sudden, you know what? You're ready for a green belt test. Really? What's that? Well, you know how to do this. You know how to do that. We need to put you through the green belt process, for an
Right.
Okinawan Shobukan green belt. And so it's very similar to you. It's mixing these things together. They're still learning what they had to learn, right? Not
Yeah.
taking that away, but they just got there through a different route, you might say.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and what's interesting is if you think about I spent a lot of time reading the stories of the Okinawan teachers and masters. There was a time where they didn't teach in a class format.
Oh, no, huh? You're
Right?
right.
It was either one on one or it was asynchronous. And what I mean by that was you and I we'd meet the teacher at a particular day or time, probably early morning. He'd have you doing something, and he'd have me doing something.
Exactly.
And typically, from what I understand, while the material would have been the same, they were addressing two different individuals.
Yes.
Maybe your reach with a kick is better, so they may overemphasize the kicking side of it.
It
Maybe
was more
mine,
individualistic, I think.
yeah, it was different. I experienced that. I have a good friend who, in college, there was a Chinese restaurant locally. And this guy was ended up meeting him. He's master of a particular Chinese martial art, and so he trained. He was good, powerful. You didn't want to exchange hands with him. And I went, oh well, I'd love to go to the class. Oh, we don't have class. We just meet when the restaurant closes in their parking lot.
How about that?
And literally, what you had all these other guys training there, right? You'd help bust the tables at the end of the day, put the dishes in the big, steam cleaning thing, and throw out the trash. And then as you got done with your chores, he'd walk out and go, "All right, you're going to practice this thing," and you'd be out there practicing that one thing over and over again. And then the other guy is doing something else, and somebody else is doing an advanced form, and everyone was somewhere different in the process,
Yep.
and everyone was practicing the same art, right? But he had everyone doing something different, and then he would always end up by giving some sort of demonstration on a technique. Well, here's why this is important. Let me show you. Let me use you as the guy that to demonstrate on, and then send everyone off. Very interesting because it matched a lot the way that I had read that the early Okinawan masters trained, and same way I also read that they did in China. Right. The reason why maybe there's a million styles that come out of both countries. There's so many
Correct.
styles, and I'm just saying it's possible. I'm sure if we sat down and kind of pinned it through, we would probably track it. The reason why there are so many styles, you could probably attribute it to one person, but then that one person, then you could do the same thing, right? Uh,
Exactly.
so that individualistic side is what you're talking about, and that's how I've ended up training. I had somebody say to me, "Hey, I want to be able to access my firearm and have gun control." okay, well then, if that's what you want and you want that immediately, I'm not going to do the full blown out curriculum. I'm going to meet you at the point of your expectations. So I'm going to teach you things that will help you have control or create enough space so that you can access your firearm. Oh, okay. And then now I'm training this guy and has nothing to do with the way I'm training someone else,
Correct.
right? So I think there's the person who wants to eventually they'll want to learn the full art, and then you got to put them through the proper steps. But I think you can get people to learn Shobokan, for example, the route that you've taken, which is probably different than the way Mr. Paku used to do it, right?
And they're just different than the way I teach now. It's just different. And so I want to jump into the Filipino martial arts. But you went through Ishinryu, and did you get your black belt in Ishinryu?
I didn't get my black belt. The sensei ended up being stationed out,
Wow. Okay.
so I didn't have a way to continue. So I got
But you
up,
got your brown belt.
yeah, it was through how it was, right? It was white, green, and then the series of stripes up
Yep.
until you got your brown belt and your black belt. So,
Yep.
but yeah, so I made it through the majority. As a matter of fact, the one form I don't practice forms anymore today, but the one that I remember that resonated with me was Sanchen.
Yep.
It's the one form, not because it's simple, but because it kind of brought everything together.
Yeah.
It's so powerful, right?
It is.
I'm a calm, cool guy. That form does the opposite for me. It gives me energy, gives me strength.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really cool form. To this day, and as a matter of fact, the techniques within it also match up the strategy and tactics within Filipino martial
Isn't
arts.
that wild?
To extract the bunkai, right, the application, it matches with it very nicely. So I'm not doing anything that competes
Yep.
or interferes with the style of the Filipino martial arts.
Recently, I was looking up. Not well. Recently, 3 or 4 months ago, I was kind of because my knowledge of Filipino martial arts is very slim. I'm just familiar with Kali and what have you, the knife fighting and
Yep.
uh, the use of the hands and that sort of thing. So I started looking it up, and it looks like there's several different components, and I guess it may depend upon the region of the Philippines where somebody may come from as to the emphasis, whether it's just empty hand or their use of weapons or they're together. I don't know. Could you share with us, like, I don't know, just a little broad view of Filipino martial arts and what does that actually mean?
Yeah, it can be complicated. You got to think about the Philippines is thousands of little islands, right?
Yeah.
An archipelago that's huge. Languages differ by island. Even just in the main island, you've got two main languages. So these folks were separated out into different
What are those
groups.
two main languages, Eduardo?
You got Tagalog, and then the other one is Ilocano. I hope I'm saying it correctly. So those
Really?
are two
Okay.
main. Yeah. So
But most
oftentimes,
Filipinos speak English, Spanish, and Tagalog, or not
well,
all, but many.
nowadays it's the two primary is Tagalog. Kind of think of it as the lingua franca, right? The language
Yep.
that everyone speaks, and English.
And English,
And English, yeah. Back up until maybe the 50s or 60s, some folks still spoke Spanish.
but not too
As a
much
matter of fact,
anymore.
not so much anymore. I think
Really? Okay.
yeah, it's shifted over time.
Interesting.
But yeah, so if you think of because the Philippines is so big, the variations of their warrior arts, there's many, right? And so the part where my father is from, the central part of the Philippines,
Where's he from at? What island?
it's an island, and the central part is commonly known as the Visayas. And he's from an island called Panay. I'm probably again mispronouncing, so excuse me, anyone out there. um, and then he grew up on the main island in Luzon, in an area known as Batangas, which is an area that also has Filipino martial arts. Actually, you can find it almost anywhere. But
Wow.
over time in modern days, as people started to shift and move to major cities for work, guys from the south moved up north, folks from the north may have gone south, west. So you see a lot of blending happening. I mean, we could go really deep into it, but in today's modern day, what you have is folks want to separate it out. Well, Filipino martial arts just speaks to the overall
Okay.
multiple styles or systems. They almost all of them are weapons based. You learn the
Really?
weapon
Okay.
concurrently, if not first. So you'll hold. Excuse me again. You'll hold a weapon in your hand as your first lesson.
Wow.
Typically
Okay.
speaking, right in Okinawa, Japan, China, usually you leave weapons till later because it becomes
Exactly. You're right. You're right.
again, it's just different in the sense that you've learned your empty hand skills, which can be applied. But in the Filipino martial arts, typically you've got a couple of facts. You've got a blunt weapon or a stick, and some folks will say that the reason why you use a stick, you see this also in European fencing, is you didn't forge a blade to be blunt to practice with because you forged a blade. Your materials were limited back then.
Gotcha.
So instead of training them with a blade, you would train them with a stick or maybe a replica,
Interesting.
right? So the motions, the way you strike and you impact with the stick is different than the way you would probably cut or slash with a sword, and the way you would block, right? If you
Okay.
think of it as a flat surface, I should have brought my other toy out too. As a flat surface, the way you would block with it would be slightly different. So a lot of the same skills. If I'm thinking of this, there's a punch in there, there's a block in there,
Yeah.
right? And there's a short range strike, which I'm doing to stay in frame. Short range strike, which is usually with the central part of the weapon, or you can do it long range, just extend it out.
Gotcha.
The same biomechanics, so to speak, or close biomechanics, I don't want to say the same, as you would with the hand.
Okay.
So then you think of the tactics you use. You don't ever want to get cut by the blade. You don't want it. You don't want any contact. I remember when I used to kickbox back in the '90s. Um, I remember the coach saying, sometimes you got to take a hit in order to hit your opponent. I mean, it gets them in close, right? Yeah, and you're safe, right? The guy's got gloves on. The most it's going to do is hurt. But if a blade touches you, there may
Yeah.
not be any going back.
That's
So
true.
now you've got all these cool tactics in there and strategies to make sure the blade is redirected away from the body, make sure that the uh, blade arm is either incapacitated, destroyed. They call it defanging the snake. So if the snake has no fangs, then you're generally speaking safe. And or immobilizing it, like they do in Wing Chun, where you're
Yeah.
stopping the
Mm-hmm.
weapon or the arm, or the potential of any ammunition in the body to actually be deployed. So that's where you see a lot of commonality. What you'll see is stylistic differences.
Oh, okay.
Some of them are a little bit different. And then you've got nowadays a sport. It is considered, they call it arnis, which comes from
Yeah.
um, uh, the Spanish word harness.
Yep.
We believe it's because they call it the harness of the hand.
Ah, okay.
So that you hear a lot of schools refer to it as arnis de mano. Some people call it esgrima, which again
Yep.
comes from the Spanish and Latin root of skirmish or fencing. And that probably comes during the Spanish period there, right? The usage of that term. And then you'll hear Kali, which can sometimes be very debated because people go, well, when did we start calling it Kali? I always knew it as Arnis or Eskrima, and I didn't really start hearing it called Kali until the 60s, right? So heavily contested. So you'll hear those three interchangeably to refer to the Filipino martial arts.
Even within the Philippines?
Well, nowadays, even within the Philippines.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Nowadays, even within the Philippines. So a lot of people, the new big term, generic term is the FMAs, right? Filipino martial arts.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So that kind of brings it all in together. And then you'll have folks that will spend a lot more time on the empty hand side. So they'll train you with the weapon, but then they'll spend a lot of time on the empty hand application. You have folks that like Balintawak, which is the last style that I spent a lot of time studying, became an instructor under, is a single weapon, single stick.
Okay.
Reminds me a lot of Wing Chun, but with the weapon. So very close range
Okay.
style. I like that one also, kind of like Sanchin, that's the form. That style did something for me because, again, when you're a little bit more laid back, you try to keep everything at a distance, at the right distance.
Right.
I must be comfortable here, right?
Yeah.
And Balintawak really challenged me because I had to be really close to my opponent and be very comfortable in fighting someone in what typically in today's modern martial arts term is that almost clinching range.
Interesting.
And so it was attractive to me because it filled in a big gap. So really, really like that style in particular. Um, so yeah, so you have vast. Some specialize a lot on the smaller blades or knives as we know it. There's some incredible styles out there. Some are very general, so to speak. So, or
Okay.
some take the approach of, I start with this, we move to a blade because the
Yeah.
mechanics are kind of the same. The strategies might change slightly, and then to empty hand, right? So
Gotcha.
there's things that are interchangeable. I don't want to say that they. Sometimes it's kind of like language, right? You can't translate a certain phrase in one language, say from Spanish into English, because it won't sound the same. It won't mean the
Correct.
same either. So sometimes there is a little bit of danger in that. But a good teacher knows how to properly train you and teach you through each phase of the ranges and the weapons. Because there's a lot of interchange. I mean, I think I'm smarter with my side today because of my knowledge of the Filipino martial arts.
I see. I would totally understand that. Yeah. Well, you're more well-rounded, correct?
Yeah, I would say I'm more well rounded today than I was say a few years ago. So I understand the Okinawa style better today. I understand it. I might even be able to extract bunkai from it because I have additional ideas on strategy and tactics that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have before.
Gotcha. Now, you're also a fitness guy too. Um, but now you've kind of, you're not even, you don't necessarily work full time in the fitness world, right? You're now more of a consultant with what you do. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went through the stages of I was a trainer, I was a class instructor, the many different classes you would see in any fitness facility. I was a personal trainer for many, many years.
Wow.
Um, and then eventually I went into management, right? I call it I was in a meeting, and I'm still friends with this. Her name's Allison Flatley. At the time, she was our regional, I want to say manager, regional director for the company I worked with back then. They're no longer in existence; they were bought out by someone else. But I did one of those. If I ran this, here's how I would do it. And it was
Yep.
one part complaint, one part of whine. And what she said was, well, put your money where your mouth is. We have all these opportunities for you to do exactly that. And so that's when I was invited basically to begin working on the management side because that's where I could make a potential difference. And that's how I ended up going into the management side or the business side of fitness. And no joke, and I think I wrote about it earlier today on LinkedIn, which was there was a time I said to myself, all I'm going to do is train people and teach.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to do. I don't want to do none of the office-y things. I don't want to tell anyone what to do. I'm just going to do my thing. And that was a big turning point because you realize all of a sudden that other trainers, I wish I would have had someone looking out for me as a trainer that say I can make this better. I can make it much. I'm big on efficiency. How do I make it easier? Not because someone isn't smart enough, but because if I want to spend more time training someone,
Yep.
then make the business process easier, so I don't have to spend a lot of time on the business process. And so that's how I got into the management side, and it's been close to 30 years now. Um,
Wow.
Since
So you've written a book, or you're writing a book. Is that correct?
I am, and it's called Unlocking Success: A Guide for Pilates Studios.
And
So Pilates
what's
was
the main premise, or what's the purpose of the book, Eduardo?
the purpose of the book is to give everyone a foundation, and basically it's applying um, uh, basic fit business principles, but applied to the operation of Pilates studios.
Okay.
And that comes from, I've spent the past almost 17 years basically building what is today the second largest Pilates business or program in the world.
Wow.
And as part of that, I ended up, by the time I was done there, I was 150 studios. When you have 150 studios, some are thriving, some are all right, and some are not doing so well. So, and then some I was building, right? Because every year you're building 10 to 15 more of them. And so it was always a constant. Earlier, I said martial arts weaves into everything. So the concept of progress and self mastery was in there. So the guys that weren't doing so well, let's figure out why it isn't doing so well. And then
Mm-hmm.
let's get them to come up. So I spent time managing and what we called recovering or turning around, right? Spent time figuring out how to take the folks that are doing well, how to make them even better,
Yeah.
right? And then the folks that are doing extremely well, you would think I'm just going to leave them alone. Well, no. How else can I help them? And then how do I take information from there and scale it out to everyone? What is it that we've learned here? Sometimes a lot of it has to do, like if it was you, the manager, it might be all you. It might be the fact that you're so motivating and you work at all hours of the day to make it the biggest and best single studio. I might not be able to bottle that, right? But I might be able to bottle some things that you did and then apply it everywhere else at the
Gotcha.
studio at large. So the book, what unlocking the success, it basically is a guide with the basic concepts and principles that I learned during that period that can be applied to any business. And so today, as a consultant, that's what I do. I
When will
come
your
in.
book be available?
The book will be available soon. Right now, you can get a small sampling of it on my website.
Okay. What, and your website's, what is it?
It's positivetransformationllc.com.
PositiveTransformationLLC.com.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
look
a
it
little
up.
bit long.
Okay. No. Hey,
Uh,
positive transformation. That's
yep,
easy to
positive
remember.
And so, yeah, you can go on there. You'll see the links to download a sampling of the booklet, and it's got the major chapters from it in
Okay.
there. And the whole idea behind it really is, how do you maximize revenue? How do you maximize benefit to your business in the most efficient way possible? Right. So sometimes we work too hard to get too little, and you've seen this, and you probably experienced it because I know I did. Is I worked hard, or a studio owner, whether they're in martial arts, any general fitness type of entity, you work very hard, long hours. You're probably making your employees work long and hard at the same time for very little return in the end. And a lot of
Okay.
it has to do with the way you've organized your overall business. And I try to take some of that information and go, here are the basic elements. If you can glean from this and do it yourself, right? Or I can help you do it. So today myself, if, for example, it took me a while to build probably the largest Pilates business in the world, to build just the business plan or elements. And today I can pretty much plug and play, and within a 3 month period, I can put the engine to a business together for
Okay.
you that will match whatever it is you do, right? That matches your style, that matches if you want to scale and franchise it. I can do that in a short amount of time. Again, it took me a lot of practice to get there.
Well, let me ask you a question, because you kind of got me thinking. I mean, your book is specifically for this certain business type. But it sounds like, in a way, your book or the methods that you're talking about may be applicable to several different types of businesses.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I would say if you went to say one of these what do they call them, business incubators, accelerators, where you spend 3 months sitting down with a business expert, it's probably what they're going to teach you,
Okay.
or what they're going to lead you to also. So it kind of does it. You can apply it across the board. It is very much written from a membership style business, right?
Okay.
That requires someone to have a membership to learn a thing, whether it's
Okay.
martial art, whether it's Pilates to get trained, whether it's personal training, or if you just wanted to have, I don't know, like a cycling studio, for example, or a rowing studio. It very much can be applied in that same way. So it can be universal, although this one in particular is written for that particular Pilates niche.
Interesting. So, you went to, what was your college degree in?
My college degree back in the day, you got to remember this was the '80s, so nowhere as fancy as they are today. It was my degree was actually in health and physical education, but with a concentration in what they call commercial fitness.
Really?
So back then, their idea was we are training future managers and business leaders of, because they were talking, there's going to be a massive boom in fitness business
Yeah.
in the '80s. You remember that? You remember what it was like back then.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that massive boom eventually did come, and the face of it has over time changed. But yeah, so I was in a physical education program where some of the electives required me to learn how to teach volleyball class, for
Yep.
example. But by and large, I spent time also in our uh, business college in both the school of health and physical education and our business school, with courses on management on one side, the accounting 101s on the other side, and then on the other one, something as simple as the administration of health and fitness facilities.
So, two questions for you. Then
Yep.
I'll circle back to kind of what we're talking about. So, one is, um, you have a family, you got kids,
Yep.
you very active lifestyle. One, are you do you consider yourself a very happy and joyful person and who enjoys life?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Generally speaking,
Okay.
in the worst, on the cloudiest days, coldest Minnesota days, to the warmest.
Okay. So number two, did you at the age of 18 or 20 in your mind back then, did you ever have any thought whatsoever that I'm going to be the guy responsible for building all these Pilates studios, in my future? Did you know that that's what you wanted to do, or did it just kind of evolve?
Yeah, it actually. So when I was 18, not so much, right? That's when I decided I was going to go and train people. Big ideal I had
Yep.
was that I was going to get you well, right? That you're going to come to me and go, whatever it is I need to do to get stronger, faster, lose weight, make sure my doctor doesn't tell me I need to take pills for my cholesterol. I was going to help somebody do that. So that was the big ideal. What I think I learned when I went into college was that I could do it at a larger scale.
Gotcha.
What I didn't know was how I was going to end up doing it.
Gotcha. Okay. So generally, you followed I guess loosely, you followed what your goal was. You just are now doing it differently. But you really, because a lot of people, and I think I see it today with a lot of younger folks. And when I say younger, I mean people under 30.
Yep.
And I was just talking with someone just yesterday, the day before, via text, and it seems like some people are kind of confused, or because maybe they think they're not doing things right because they don't really know what they want in the future. But none of us really know where we're going to end up in the future, right,
Yeah.
Eduardo? We
Yeah.
don't. So, but you can still be happy, not really know, but yet go along this adventure and finding out maybe what your purpose is, correct?
Yeah, 100%. It reminds me, you know what it reminds me of? Your
What's
book.
oh
It's that journey, right?
yeah.
I
It,
mean, you just never know how it's going to end up looking like, right? You
mm-hmm.
just never know. I think you were just saying the general happy piece, which I'm not sure if that's where you were going. Your attitude will dictate also how far it will go. I tell my kids all the time that the ability for them to smile, and not just this, right, but their
Yeah.
ability to smile with everything they do is what's going to make them the money,
Yeah.
right? So again, it's not to do a fake smile, but it's their ability to be very gracious. So gratitude, humility, it's what's going to take you further. You can clearly see where anyone who's made it far has had to show that,
Yes.
right? And anyone who's made it far by beating people over the head, yeah, they'll get there because you'll beat people down enough that they'll get the two different effects, right?
Yeah.
Two completely different effects.
That's true. So I want to talk about one small thing, and then I think what we'd like to do is have like a follow up to this conversation,
Okay.
because I think we're just now starting to unpack some of the fun stuff that people might want to say. Hey, what's he going to say next about this topic or whatever, right? So we'll have to schedule a time for a part two conversation because I
Okay.
want to get more into the fitness side of what you've done and how that applies to business in the modern world, whether it's fitness or otherwise, and then your philosophy, your leadership and management philosophy. I want to dive into that in that
Okay.
conversation. Okay. um, so the one last thing I want to kind of touch base on is kind of swing the pendulum back to the martial arts conversation,
Yep.
but I want to kind of ask you, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are into martial arts nowadays, and they're in their upper teens or they're in their 20s, maybe even 30s. And it's kind of like if you only keep your radio station on 98.5 and you never turn the dial, all you know is 98.5,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if I'm taking martial arts today and all I know is I hear this, and this, and I see this, and I see what you talked about, man, you can get a black belt in a year and a half at this school here, or whatever, right?
Yep.
Um, if you were to look at trends today and then comparing with how your father raised you and your uncle raised you when you were a younger person, what you were exposed to, how do you think the two different models, what do they produce in an individual, versus an old school type of methodology versus this new school, which sometimes you get a trophy just for showing up? What is the outcome of that in the individual?
I think there's a bit of entitlement that happens. And so, I mean, I see it just with my kids' generation. The the ability, not the ability, the way they view how they arrive at an outcome.
Okay.
It's the digital world that we live in, right? But the way they view the outcome seems to have been shortcut. Like they live off of shortcuts, right?
Yep.
It's a single click button to purchase, right?
Right.
I don't have to go to the mall and look at all the shirts I want. I just go onto Amazon, for example, and single click done, right? Where you might be a little bit more meticulous in your choice if you spend time touching it, looking at it, seeing how it fits, seeing how it looks,
Interesting.
learning
Yeah.
more, right? Well, I see that process has been shortcutted. They don't want to spend time doing that anymore, right? Why should I do that? It's just that one thing. Okay, well, let's go try it on. No, no, no. I know it's good for me. And then, unfortunately, Amazon has the other effect, which is you just return it. You got
That's
30
true.
days. You just put it in a box and send it back. They didn't make it that easy to return stuff back in the day.
No, they didn't.
It wasn't that easy, right? Again, don't get me wrong. I think these modern things are great. It's created certain conveniences, but I
Oh,
think
of course. Yeah.
it's muddied the waters a bit. So I think the ability to earn, like earn your high school diploma, earn it is not 100% there. And what I mean is, I see the way we had to study versus the way my kids have to study. Don't get, they're smart. I mean, they do some cool stuff, but it's a little bit different where I would expect them to sit down and spend a little bit more time writing out their essays. They do it in a click, 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 and they type it out on their iPads because that's what they're given in their schools
Yeah.
nowadays to do their homework, or spend a little bit more time reading the text. Well, I see that also happening in martial arts, and
How
the
so?
problem is, well, the problem is I don't want to say it's everyone because that would be wrong, but there are certain places that you literally could go there and expect that every 3 months there's going to be a test. You pay for the test, so the school makes money for it. You pay for the belt as part of that test. There's a big testing fee,
Yeah.
and they almost never fail you. You're going to get a belt,
You're right.
whatever that next belt is, and that's how you end up with something that was so coveted. The black belt, even the green belt in our days out of these Okinawan systems
That was huge.
were huge. It was coveted. You were incredible. The only place I see that today where the belts, and you might already see the effects of that commercialism in the belt part of it, is in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools, right? They
Yep.
go white, I think it's blue when you're pretty darn good,
Yep.
and I think eventually black. Maybe they have a brown in between.
Yeah, I think it goes purple, brown, and black because my younger son, Zach, I think he's got his purple belt now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've seen that. You don't have a lot of belts, but there's an earning process where the
There's,
instructor says, "Hey, I just want to let everyone know, Zach, you've earned your whatever belt."
yeah.
So a little bit different setup. They still live within almost the same way what Okinawan karate did back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s did. So I still see that there, and I see those guys. They work hard to get good at that sport in particular. To me, it's fascinating, and I go, okay, I really dig that, and they got to utilize it, right? We
Yeah.
had to use it. We had to do bare knuckle sparring,
Yeah.
full contact most of the time
Yeah.
back in the day. So I see that, and the way you earn things is considerably different. It's been shortcutted so much that I am entitled to it. I remember I stopped teaching after college when I would utilize a big mass testing event more than anything else to honor the work of a student. I knew who already was getting their next belt,
Yes, correct.
and I had parents. I had told them prior to, hey, your son is not ready for his green belt. I told them just was not ready, and I showed them exactly why.
Yep.
I didn't need their money. I mean, I was a poor instructor back then. Now, but what I meant was I wasn't doing it for money. That was not my primary way of earning
No,
money
I
at that.
got you.
And I said, hey, he's not in this ceremony. I want him there. We want all the students there, but just heads up, he won't be called up to receive a belt. What do you think these parents did? They created this whole commotion. They drove up and down. They got other parents involved, going, "Oh, he's being totally unfair. My son should have it."
Wow.
I, I could. There was nothing. It would have been very unfair to the students, but also unfair to that kid.
Correct.
Give them something. And when I say you're not worth it, I'm not devaluing the person. I'm just saying you're missing some elements of what I'm
Mm-hmm.
teaching you before I can give you this belt.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I've seen it in the corporate world. Hey, we got to give this person this title and this money just because you like them, because they haven't completed, they haven't done, they haven't achieved, and I can find 10 other people
Interesting, Eduardo.
before I give them this, right? I mean, I was short of getting beat up by people with titles with a V and a P in it, right?
Yep.
So we got to do it. I'm above you. It has to be done. I was like, oh, you can do it. You're the big boss. So why even bring the debate to me? Just give them what it is you feel that they deserve. I'm just telling you that there's 10 other people that are going to go, huh, that's interesting. I
Yeah.
put in hours of work. I lead my team well, and how come I'm not getting that? So that's what I see. That is completely. I don't want to say completely different, but what I want to say is that I've seen a lot more of that nowadays than back then. I mean, if you didn't make it, you didn't make it. You either
Yeah.
worked hard or you went on and did something different.
Yeah. I remember I got my green belt um, back when we were over in Rhoda. And I remember when I joined the karate class there were, the Navy and Marine guys in the class. And there were the ones that had been there for a while, and they were all green belts, right? So young, skinny high school kid, youngest kid in the class. Everybody else was adults. I idealized that green belt. That's all I wanted was the green belt, right?
Yeah,
And so what's wild is, I finally got the green belt. I got the green belt, and so I remember so I'm okay. Next is the brown belt, right? So all these guys that had the green belt, now they're brown belts, and I'm a green belt, right? And so I remember I made a comment. Can't remember the comment what the comment was. But I remember my instructor, um, in front of the whole class, he just because he called me junior, right? He's like,
yeah,
Junior, now you're going to mature. The green belt is the maturation phase. I was a green belt for over a year. Okay. But guess what? I was okay with that. I was
right.
completely okay with that because I'm still learning and whatnot, right? Um, I was just enjoying the process. I really
Yeah,
was, as a young high school kid. And I think a lot of, and I think you said it, that I guess that goes back to what you were saying about the shortcut, right? Um, I think sometimes in our world today, it's hard for people to slow down and whatever it is, life, family, slow down and just enjoy the ride, enjoy the
yeah,
process, soak it up, right? You know, wallow in it, bathe in it, whatever. Because we're in such a hurry
and
nowadays.
a hurry to get there, right? I mean, there is a process. Some take less time, say some take longer.
That's true.
You could always break things down into milestones. Which is fine. The journey's still long, right? So if I took a trip from Minneapolis all the way down to Florida. What's in northern Florida? What's the town in northern Florida? Why is the name slipping my mind? Good God.
In Jacksonville,
In the Panhandle, Pensacola.
Pensacola. Okay.
Pensacola. So long drive, right? I broke it out into parts just to get there,
Yeah.
right? And what did we earn? We earned the beauty of Florida in the month of February, leaving Minnesota, right? So sunshine and beach and white sands and in the Gulf, right? So we earned that, and we could have tried to bolt it through. We would have been completely trashed by the time we got there, meaning tired and extra cranky. But we took some very strategic stops.
So you did it in stages.
I did it in stages, and made it all the way through. I earned that ride down there, right? It's interesting to this day. My coccyx has locked up since that ride. It was so long to come and go, and mainly because of the seat of the that I was in. But you earned it. I see. It's the same thing. No one enjoys. We enjoyed that ride. I got a chance to see what the mountains of Tennessee were as you're coming in towards Nashville, right? In
Yeah.
that area, you get a chance to see how beautiful it is by comparison to the cold and white northwest was as you come down it. You enjoy it so much more. And what you did, I remember seeing you. I met you. I think you were already black belt. And what I saw, if I can talk about your journey, was I would see you, if not, I would say it was every day at the gym
I was there. I
practicing.
lived there. Yeah.
You had your black belt already. You were still practicing.
Yeah.
This wasn't even in class. This is outside of class.
Yeah.
You were still practicing. And I remember, yeah, no wonder the guy's good because he's always practicing.
Yeah.
And you
So
know what's funny? You've seen pictures of me doing the splits, right?
yeah, I do.
I got that. I got the idea of trying to get the splits because I think you got this. You had the splits back
Yep.
then. And so from then on, it was, I got to get the splits like Junior.
How about that? You just never know who you're going to influence, right?
Yeah.
So once again, give us the name of your website.
Positive Transformation LLC.com.
.com. And the name of your book again, Eduardo?
It's called Unlocking Success, a guide for Pilates studios.
Unlocking Success. That's a good title. I like that.
Yes, yes. My goal is to make sure every owner out there that's in this business can do two things. That is for them to earn, right? Hard work gets you to earn something. Earn, we all go into this because we want to earn some kind of living that's
Okay.
interesting to them, but also find freedom, which is the ability to have a business that is so well run, efficiently run, that they can actually have the work life balance that they want.
Yes.
They can do what you do, drive down to Key West and enjoy time in Key West, because they can actually leave the business behind. They have it set up in such a way that they can do that.
So once again, you're helping people with this book or with what's contained in the book, right?
Yes.
And what's contained in the book is how many years of work that you've gained over the years? How much experience is in that book?
30 years worth of experience.
It's a long time. It's
Yeah.
a lot of experience.
Yes, sir.
So what I'd like to do is I'll reach back out to you, but we'll want to have you back on to have part 2 of the conversation. But no, we appreciate the time, Eduardo.
Junior, thank you, sir. It was fun.
Very well. You keep warm up there in Minnesota.
You got it, man. And you stay
All right.
cool down there.
All right. And I'm heading to Key West in about 2 weeks. So you'll see it. I'll put pictures and stuff up, but I'm headed down to Key West in about 2 weeks.
Man, enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Actually, 2 weeks from today, I'll be in Key West. Yeah. So,
I'm jealous. Don't say it anymore, man.
all right. Well, listen, get your workout in today, and I'll do the same
Yes,
thing
sir.
later.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye
Bye.
bye.